Good evening. Could we please call the meeting to order? We all rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Martin?
Here.
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Here.
Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Conway?
Here.
Mayor Elliott?
Here.
Mr. Gendron?
Here.
Mr. Leary?
Here.
7 present.
7 present. First order of business is special order of business, spotlight on excellence. Maury School Public Service Announcement Award for Walk for Hunger. Madam Superintendent?
The Maury School. On May 4th, I was an invited guest to an honor that was bestowed upon the Maury School. Their 4th grade had come up with a phenomenal public service announcement combating hunger and actually getting buy-in for the Walk of Hunger in collaboration with Sal's Pizza. It was wonderful to see that community. It always is, but it was a special day, so I thought that the committee and the city would enjoy seeing this honor that was bestowed upon the Maury School through the Celtics organization and Sal's Pizza. So I'd like to introduce Principal Robin Desmond, who will speak on behalf of the school, and also with Mrs. Desmond is Assistant Principal Andrew DeRoches.
Thank you. Back in January, we were approached by the Celtics organization and asked if we'd be interested in collaborating with them, Sal's Pizza, and Project Bread to create a public service announcement around hunger awareness and the Walk for Hunger on May 4th in Boston. And we thought about it, and our 4th grade was just coming off a persuasive writing unit, and we thought it would be a great opportunity to allow the children to actually take some of what they've learned in school about writing and persuasion and apply it to a real-world situation. So that's what we did. And if I have the presentation here, so as you can see, it was the Boston Celtics who approached us, but they were also supported with or by Sal's Pizza and Project Bread. Representatives from all of those groups came to the school and kicked it off with all of our 4th grade and showed some examples of some public service announcements that Celtics players had just recently done and gave them an idea. And again, we looked at the Common Core standards, and the elements of persuasive writing were critical, so we figured this would be a great match. They also were able to do some of the speaking standards from the Common Core curriculum that they don't always have a chance to do in presenting this. So what they did was they researched the facts around hunger and the numbers of people that are hungry in Massachusetts and looking for support. They also researched Project Bread's Walk for Hunger and what that entails, and they came up with skits, songs, and raps around hunger and awareness for hunger and the Walk for Hunger. And then a professional production company hired by the Boston Celtics came to our school and produced this PSA from all of the skits, songs, and raps. And the kids were able to experience what the behind the scenes of making a movie or a commercial or anything like that. So it was quite an experience that the children were able to take part in. Once the PSA was completed, the Celtics came back to our school to do a whole school pep rally and also a basketball clinic for our students. Dana Barrows, former Celtics guard, came to the school. He ran a basketball clinic for all of our 4th graders. They participated in that clinic. They learned skills around dribbling, and they also learned about the importance of eating healthy and working hard in school. From there, we had the entire school join us in the gymnasium for the pep rally. We had over 500 students. They were able to witness Lucky, the mascot, do some special dunk tricks.
That's really Mrs. Desmond on the left.
And then they heard from the representative from Project Bread who talked about the importance of the walk and raising awareness around hunger. And also, they heard from Dana Barrows around healthy eating. And so now I'd love to present the final product for everyone to see.
Snack for the rest of the week. Thanks, guys. An apple, pear, orange, or banana will leave you with lots of stamina.
Hi guys, what's up?
We're practicing for the Walk for Hunger.
What's the Walk for Hunger?
It's an event that raises money for programs to feed hungry people in Massachusetts. If one person can make a difference, we could all make a difference.
Sounds like a great way to help those in need. Do you have to walk?
No, there are other ways you can help. You can donate or volunteer. You can give out water. I'm so thirsty. Here you go. Thank you. You can donate money to support a walker or donate online. Here you go. Thank you for your support.
I'm hungry!
That's not just what one person says. That's not just what 7 people say. That's not just what 70 people say. 700,000 people say that they are hungry every day.
If you're one of the 700,000 people affected by hunger in Massachusetts, call the Food Source Hotline today, 1-800-645-8333.
And I also wanted to thank and acknowledge the teachers in the 4th grade that took time out of their regular schedule to help support the kids in their project. And the teachers are here today, Mrs. Vayu, Miss Amos, Miss Armstrong, and Mrs. Vogel, who was not able to join us this evening. And then we have some students who were actually in the public service announcement that came
Teachers,
as
would you
well.
mind coming up to the podium so people at home could see you? I knew if I didn't put you on the spot, you wouldn't come up. And the kids.
Kids did awesome.
On behalf of the city, we want to thank you, and you did an outstanding job.
Thank you.
Great work. Could I just ask a question? Do we have any idea when and where and how often that service announcement is going to be played?
So I'm not exactly sure when it will be played on the Boston Celtics side. It is on their website running all the time.
Okay, is that copyrighted to the Celtics? Is not something we could get here in the city to play through our cable network?
We can, absolutely.
We can?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I think it'd be important for us to get access to it, and we can just continue to play it.
Yeah, and it is on our website through the Lowell Public Schools website, the Maury link. So it is there
Right.
currently, but we could certainly put it somewhere else as well.
This may not make sense, but can we get it on YouTube? Because if it goes YouTube, it goes viral, doesn't it? I mean, that's what the kids tell me.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Members, anything? Moving on to the next item on the agenda. We have the minutes, approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled school committee meeting of Wednesday. Well, you know, why don't we accept that as a report of progress, the presentation. Motion by Mr. Conway, second by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, so ordered. Moving on to the approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled school committee meeting of Wednesday, March 5th. Discussion, Madam Ms. Rosikowicz. Motion to approve, to accept and place on file, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Under the next section of the agenda, permission to enter March 19th, 2014. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Charms Collaborative Program in the amount of $30,878 to provide for out-of-district tuition costs for one student enrolled in receiving services is outlined in their special education IEP. Funding will be provided by the school department budget special education tuition account. To the Carroll School in the amount of $17,442, again to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for one student enrolled in receiving services is outlined in their special education IEP. Tuition provided by the school department budget special education tuition account. To Youth Villages, Jermaine Lawrence Incorporated in the amount of $19,827 to provide for the out-of-district costs for one student enrolled in receiving students services is outlined in their special education IEP. Funding provided by the school department budget special education account. To GP Productions in the amount of $17,700 to provide for videoing and editing of a three-part video series as required by the Turnaround Practices Documentation Project Grant. Funding provided by the Turnaround Practices Documentation Project Grant.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Discussion on this communication? Move to approve by Ms. Martin, second by Mr. Leary. Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leahy? Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
7 yeas, motion carries. Next item. I do it all the time. Next item on the agenda is under memorials. Chair would like to recognize Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I may, I'd just like to offer a few words about the late Paul Sheehy. Paul Sheehy, former Lowell City Manager, State Representative, and State Senator, passed away on March 10th, 2014. Paul Sheehy began his career as a teacher at the Pawtucket Junior High in the Lowell Public Schools. Throughout the years that ensued, he advocated tirelessly for public education in Lowell and the surrounding areas. It's fitting to remember Paul Sheehy at a Lowell School Committee meeting. I'd like to read a few direct quotes to be included as part of the record of this meeting that I read in the Lowell Sun this past week and heard in Chancellor Meehan's eulogy for Senator Sheehy. Chancellor Meehan said, "Paul rose quickly in the House, forging friendships, earning a seat on the powerful Ways and Means Committee and the vice chairmanship of the Education Committee. And it was in the House where Paul began his lifelong commitment to provide a high-quality public education for everyone who was willing to work at it, regardless of race, gender, or economic status. He wrote the legislation creating Middlesex Community College in Bedford. He wrote a law establishing the Greater Lowell Regional Technical High School. He wrote legislation, and he was the chief architect of the merger of Lowell State and Lowell Tech. And make no mistake about it, we would not have a world-class public research university in Lowell without Paul J. Sheehy. The doctoral program in education at UMass Lowell that was produced some of the finest educators in the state was advocated for and funded as a result of Paul Sheehy's efforts. In 1984, Paul was elected to the Massachusetts State Senate, where he continued his advocacy for public education, delivering funding for the construction of 14 new public schools in Lowell, and proposing and securing funding for a permanent Middlesex Community College in downtown Lowell. Former State Senator Stephen Pangiotakis made the point that Paul Sheehy arguably did more for Lowell as a legislator than anyone who ever served. What would Lowell be without the university and the community college? Hundreds of people who never knew who Paul Sheehy was went to college, succeeded, and have a better life because of his commitment to public education. On March 10th, 2014, we lost a strong advocate for education, but more importantly, we lost a good and loyal friend. On behalf of the Lowell School Committee, I would like to thank Paul Sheehy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to make a brief comment. Certainly, the Sheehy family and the city of Lowell experienced a great loss in the passing of Paul Sheehy. I can remember back in 1993 when I was first elected to the city council, one of the first calls I got congratulating me and wishing me well was from Mr. Sheehy. His commitment to education is especially significant here, and I think that Councilor Rita Mercier made an excellent point at our joint meeting of the council and school committee the other night to kick off an aggressive school building program that it was fitting that it was to kick off on the day that Paul Sheehy passed. And I think if we mimic the leadership that Paul Sheehy showed in his commitment to education, that we'll certainly be successful in that effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gendron. Further comment? Could we all please rise and darken chambers? May he rest in peace. Next section of the agenda under motions. First motion of the night by Kristen Ross Sikowitz. Request that the superintendent work with staff to devise a comprehensive cost-saving strategies and solutions to decrease the cost of transporting children in the district. Second by Ms. Scott. Ms. Ross Sikowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, in reviewing our most recent quarterly finances and looking at our projections, it was estimated that we would be in the red, about $250,000 at the end of the school year due to our significantly increased costs in transportation, not just for homeless students in the district, but also special education transportation. So to that end, I did a little homework with regard to McKinney-Vento reimbursement, and I know that the reimbursement rate from the state has fluctuated from year to year. And I wonder if it's even to our benefit to reach out to our delegation to advocate at the state level, not just on behalf of our own community, which is being severely impacted by these rising costs, but every other community in the Commonwealth that's being severely impacted by these costs. So I appreciate your entertaining this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary?
Just real quick, I think it's a good motion, but I also think what part of the process should be looking back at what former Assistant Superintendent Ann Murphy was working on with Transportation Director John Dakota about rezoning and realignment. I know that they were working on it a couple of years ago. That's something that really is going to have a major part of this overall discussion if we're going to be truly serious about looking at transportation costs. Won't be easy to do and probably not going to be able to do it this year, but it's something that we need to work on as we go forward. You know, I think it's a timely motion. It's something that we've looked at as far as the homeless costs and other costs. I think Mr. Dakota and his department have pinched everywhere they could at this point in time, so we really have to do something more of like to look at the whole problem as opposed to nipping and tucking bus routes. But I think it's a good motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Next motion by Ms. Scott and Ms. Ross Sikowitz. Request the superintendent furnish the committee with the anticipated FY15 net school spending requirement to include the city's required contributions and to bring forward an FY15 budget that does fall below the net school spending requirement. Does not. I suspected that. We're missing a pretty significant word in there. That does not fall below the net spending requirement. Ms. Ross Sikowitz, motion does not require a second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really, we're just looking for preliminary numbers, so we're not surprised, as we have been in previous years and then in concurrent years, with the fact that we have not met our net school spending. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Ms. Scott?
And also the preliminary budget number for the $800,000 that was proposed by the city, if we could get some feedback on how that fits into the net school spending requirement for FY15. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Further discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next motion, under item number 9, motion by Ms. Kristen Ross-Sikowitz and Ms. Kim Scott, request the superintendent develop a report outlining the feasibility of allowing seasonal sporting activities to be counted towards the physical education requirement for Lowell High School students. Motion does not require a second. Who's going first this time? Ms. Scott?
That's me. We're going back and forth on these. We made this motion, Mr. Gendron brought this up as an issue last week. It's also been discussed over and over again during some subcommittees, Lowell High School Subcommittee, Athletics Subcommittee, as possible ways to get around the early dismissal time for the sports teams, as a way for students to take additional advanced coursework. I know that our neighboring town of Chelmsford does this and has done this for a while. I've been in touch with school committee members there. So I'm really just looking for feasibility on how we could go about it. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. You all set?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an excellent idea. I think that obviously the requirement for physical education is to make sure all of our students are active and contributing to physical fitness in some way. But those students that are involved in sports, especially demanding sports, swimming, wrestling, what have you, are obviously getting that ethic, and to be able to use that time towards something else, whether it be early dismissal or whether it be another class, certainly makes a lot of sense. So it would be great if we could find a way to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gendron. Further discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Next motion, again by Ms. Ross-Sikowitz and Ms. Scott, request, the language will be amended, but I'll read the original motion. Request the school committee report on the status of the superintendent, parent board, and status of site councils at all schools and the work facilitated to develop them. I think it's a simple language substitution. Request the superintendent report on the status of homework policy, et cetera. So motion to amend by Ms. Scott, seconded by Ms. Ross-Sikowitz. Oh, I skipped another, I'm sorry. Superintendent report on the status of the superintendent parent board, right, okay. On the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been a long process to grow the membership in these groups. The student site councils, I made a motion a while back on this, are required at all of the schools legally. We're supposed to have one. They're supposed to be part of developing the school improvement plan at each school. I'm really just looking for an update right now to see where we are on those and how we're going to further grow those. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ross-Sikowitz, you all set? Okay. So the motion as amended, just to substitute school superintendent for school committee report. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Item number 11, motion by Ms. Ross-Sikowitz and Ms. Scott. Request the superintendent give an update on the homework policy of the district and the expectations to follow the policy or plans to modify. Motion does not require a second, with 2 members sponsoring it. Who's going first? Ms. Scott?
I'll go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this policy has been brought up by parents to me, a question about it, mostly over concerns about their students getting to high school and having a large amount of homework that they're not used to having to do. We do have a policy, IKB is the policy number. The policy requires a minimum of 4 nights per week of homework, Monday through Thursday, with Friday as an option. And then it actually gives a range from first grade up through high school in the policy. I think it's time for us to visit this, decide whether or not it's a policy that we want to amend or to enforce, I guess is where I'm going with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ross Sikowitz?
I just wanted to weigh in with just a small comment. I had also heard concerns from parents that the homework was actually being allowed to be done in class rather than being sent home with the child, which is very concerning for me because we grasp at every last minute of instruction in those classrooms, and any less instruction that's happening in those classrooms, which is then being rededicated to homework, is really problematic. So I would appreciate if we developed something that's more consistent and enforced it and allowed homework to be just that, homework. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next motion of the evening by Ms. Ross Sikowitz and Ms. Scott. Request the superintendent provide alternatives to rental space for the central office, including modular space at the Rogers School or a building purchase. Motion does not require a second. Ms. Scott?
Go again. So I brought this motion forward because in our prior life at Bon Marché, we rented space for approximately $650,000 a year. That was my understanding. I wasn't on the committee at the time. This space, I don't see the need going away. We're having a population growth. We're talking about putting our students in modulars for a middle school. So I just really wanted to see whether or not a purchase or an option to purchase in our next RFP for rental space, if that's what we decide to do, would be a smart option for the district, a financially smart option for the district. I did include the modular space because I didn't know whether or not the Lowell High School Freshman Academy was discussed as an option years from now for space. I didn't know if modulars, we talked about it with our students. I didn't know if it would be an option for office space as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All set? Madam Superintendent, Mr. Lang? Madam Superintendent?
Yes. Thank you. As the committee knows, you have okayed a process to go forward with an RFP. And we're in that process, but in looking at where the location is, part of what we're going to have to look at for the next bit of time is how we're going to get enough space until we get into the next range of buildings. I know that by us reopening the Rogers School, that will afford us another few hundred elementary students, but as far as this goes, we can look into what we're going to need and include that into our budget process.
Ms. Martin and Mr. Leary?
Thank you very much. I know you referenced the RFP process that's going on right now. Where exactly are we in that?
Mr. Lang?
As far as the rental or the lease of the building goes, the document itself should be finalized by Friday, and I believe it was set to be advertised either next Tuesday or Wednesday, and it's got to run about a 30-day cycle. So we'd be looking at the end of April by the time we'd be getting responses to start to evaluate. So I had anticipated being able to do that, have some analysis and recommendations by the middle of May when we start looking at the budget for next year. I'll have to speak with the city folks to kind of figure out, how it would actually go out as an RFP if they wanted to be an option to purchase, or I think that would be a different process we'd really go through. The modular issue, I think, is something that, both now and in the future we could look at the Rogers School or any other school sites that would have space. But I don't know how easily we're going to be able to commingle the two kind of advertisements at the same time. And I don't want to derail the lease issue because we need to get space for the start of the school year. So I'll have to go back and talk to them kind of tomorrow and figure that out. If anything, once the RFP for the lease is advertised, we could do an addendum at any point during the lease. But I just want to look at the ramifications first. But I'm going to have to move quick on it. I'll bring some kind of a recommendation back at the April 2nd meeting before the process obviously concludes.
Mr. Leary?
Good. No, I appreciate that, Mr. Lang. Thank you very much. Just probably some follow-up questions, probably at a later date, maybe getting a little ahead. How many folks from the central office with space needs do you anticipate you would need to move out to have, capacity for next year? Are you looking for the entire central administration? Are you looking for a piece? What do you actually need to have to function? And you may not have the answer for that now, but as we get into the early April discussions, I think that'd be the first part to know. Do we need to do this all at one shot? Or can there be different alternatives? Can people be working, and just kind of thinking out loud, not really, do I agree with it or not agree with it, but like working from home. Some folks do that, some folks can't. Some functions could be located at a different location. Mary Sheehan would not be able to work from home, of course, but I think that's some of these options that we would not want to look at. But I think the first part is, how much do you need next year? Because as we get into these tight budget years, we start making plans for potentially, depending on how we go with the buildings, putting modulars at different middle schools to ease crowding, what have you, or different schools. We might want to put that as part of that process as well. But thank you.
You did bring this forward, correct, Mr. Lang? The last time, this is going to be done in phases?
Yeah, when we moved into the Rogers, we actually did a 6-month phase move. We know for September that we basically need to free up, I think, a minimum of 7 classrooms, 7 to 8, which would mean we'd need to really vacate one of the 2 floors, either the top floor or the middle floor. And then over the course of the year, make arrangements for the rest of the building to join wherever the space ends up being, so that for the start of the 15-16 school year, the Rogers would just be totally a school. It does become problematic as more and more school space gets used for children, and we still have adult functions going on in the building because you just have extra traffic going through the educational space. So we'd want it to be kind of a shorter move, but it can happen over the course of the year. I think when we do the lease, we were looking to just do a 3-year lease, put it out there to see what was there, because a lot of the decisions we are going to make in the coming weeks and months may impact other space that will be available in the school department years down the road, depending on when things happen. One of the issues with the high school project is that would free up the freshman academy for a potential building once the high school was done. It certainly wouldn't be in the next 3 years. You're probably looking 8 to 10 years out at that point by the time it was free and open. But we'd want to keep our options open. But we're looking at just a 3-year lease, a phased move. Even acquiring space, being budget conscious, we don't need to take on the whole lease on day one. It could be a phased lease and pick up space as we needed it over the course of that first year. But I'll put together a quick report for you for the next meeting.
All set, Mr. Leary? Further discussion? Ms. Scott?
I just want to make sure I understand correct, through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Lang. So the RFP will be presented at the conditions, the space requirements, and everything will be presented at the next meeting?
No, you had approved us issuing the RFP, and we based the RFP specs off the previous leases we've had for admin space. So we were advertising that RFP for office space. What I was indicating at the next meeting we would do is bring back a recommendation to look at how we could possibly look at, say, a building purchase. Again, I think you'd be looking at a different group of buildings or different availability of space, but we could look to see how we could incorporate that and possibly have it run parallel to the RFP for the lease of space.
All set, Ms. Scott? Ms. Rastegowitz?
Sorry, something you said just piqued my interest. So you based your specs on previous administration space, so like the Bon Marché building, or current situation? I mean, previously you had a lot more central administration staff on site, right, and a lot of those staff have actually been rolled out to the schools where they actually should be. Right. So you have less staff. So my hope is that we're not gearing up in size.
Not square footage wise. I was talking about building specifications regarding building materials and, office requirements, things of that sort. We've gone from about 175 staff when we were at the Bon Marché down to, I believe, about 105 to 110 staff at the Rogers. So obviously there's a square footage adjustment down. I was just talking about the actual specifications that we had used in putting together the types and quality, things of that sort.
Further discussion? If there's no objection, I just have one question. So, Mr. Lang, is that considering the number of employees has reduced, does that not reduce the square footage requirements?
No, it does.
It does? Okay.
Yeah, no, we've taken that into consideration.
Right.
The square footage requirements are similar to what we have at the Rogers now,
Got it.
which is less than what we had at the Bon Marché.
Great, thank you. Ms. Martin?
Just for my own edification, as we're moving along this one path, and I can absolutely understand wanting to get additional information about, what the process may be to purchase, but do we have a sense of exactly how involved it will be to kind of get into this conversation even? I mean, my thought is, our district's in flux right now. I mean, we are having a lot of conversations starting in about 10 minutes about what our district is going to look like 5, 10, 15 years down the road. So there's a lot that's that's not for sure right now. I'd have concerns about moving forward with the purchase just because we don't have a strong idea of what we're going to need, and we haven't had those kind of conversations. I mean, the idea of moving forward with a 3-year lease, I think, is the most attractive option right now. And I would just be concerned if it's just a matter of finding out what the situation and what the process would be, and it's, a phone call so we can report back and, have the information, that's great. I just wouldn't want us to get into a situation where we're developing proposals and spending a lot of time on what we would want to purchase when there may not be the will on the committee to move forward with the purchase.
And I think that's the message. We're going to continue to go down these parallel tracks. Proceed with the RFP process as well as gather information on rental and purchase, correct?
That's how I would approach it. I mean,
Okay.
it really, and I don't know if we had an email or a conversation about this, it really is two totally different processes, and I have to figure out how they would even come together. On physical building purchase, we would have to get, not only the school committee, but the city council would have to be involved, and it would be a different type of procurement that would go out. You'd have to have, because the school department on the lease would just be paying for the lease, the city council would actually have to purchase the building, the school committee couldn't. There's a bunch of different steps that would have to go into play. And I have to think that there are people out there that have office space that they want to turn over and lease on a short-term commitment like 3 years, as opposed to a whole different group of people that would have the ability or interest in selling a building permanently. I personally think the lease option for the 3 years gives us great flexibility and not an overcommitment to space. It lets us see what happens with the school building program. It also gives us another 3 years to see what happens with our population and shifts. And at that point in time, we might be in a better position to make a purchase or make a longer-term commitment. But I can certainly get the information to show you what that path would involve.
Mr. Conway?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Lang. The central administration downtown, I just want to try to put this in perspective here. How many people did we have downtown at that time working in Central?
I believe it was 175 approximately.
It was 175. And what about do you know what the square footage on something like that was?
I honestly don't know off the top of my head. If I had to guess, I would say it was somewhere around 40 to 45,000 square feet.
Okay,
But that's an absolute guess.
Okay. And now, at our present location for Central, how many staff members did you say we have now?
I want to say like 105 to 110.
Okay, all right, 105, 110. And what type of square footage would we have there, utilizing the office space at this point?
I don't have those numbers with me tonight.
Would you say there would be less than what was down at Central?
Oh, yeah, certainly.
Okay.
No, we were only putting the RFP out to accommodate the existing folks who are at the Rogers School now who would need to be accommodated off-site.
Okay.
It's less square footage than the Bon Marché building. I just don't have that wasn't the piece I was working on. I don't have those figures with me tonight.
When the RFP goes out, just so that, the public understands this too, and also myself, does it actually have on that RFP and how many square feet is needed?
Yes.
Okay. And have you come up with a figure, or Central, the superintendent?
There are different formulas that come into play just based on the number of individuals, the number of common areas, offices you need. And there's a different team of people that are working on putting that piece of it together. I've been looking at the actual language that goes into the RFP, more around the legal requirements of the bid. And we're supposed to have our draft together on Friday to send up to the city to advertise for us.
So are you thinking that it's going to be roughly the same size, square footage as you have right now presently?
Similar, except the issue at the Rogers School is that there was a lot of, obviously, because it was a school, there's a lot of extra area that we wouldn't have. The hallways are larger than you would have in a regular office. You wouldn't have a gym and a cafeteria, things of that sort. But the office space will be similar to the people that we're housing in offices right now at the Rogers.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think I'm okay with the motion as an exercise to, for comparison. I tend to agree with Ms. Martin when she brings up the fact that, we have a couple of different long-term visions for what the central office might be housed in, for instance, the freshman academy potentially. So coming up with a long-term solution now may not be the best approach if we have another alternative in mind. But I did want to reiterate what I said when we initially passed the RFP motion, and that is that I think we should look at this with an eye toward a way to potentially stimulate the city's economy, right? Because I think that having 110 people located somewhere downtown, I think would be a boost to the city. Not to say we're looking to pay through the nose for office space downtown, certainly not. But all things being equal, if we could put the central administration office downtown, not only would it have the added benefit of boosting the city, it would also be centrally located so that parents or students, teachers, whoever needs to access the administration would have easy access. So I'd like to reiterate that as potential preference.
Mr. Lang?
Yeah, and we heard you loud and clear on that. The city's planning development office could not have been more helpful in this process. They've had 2 different individuals that have been working with us, asset managers and folks that really know what available space is out there. We've had a few meetings with them. They've helped us with different bid specifications to really kind of hone in on where we would be the most useful to the city. So that definitely has gone into consideration in drafting this RFP.
Ms. Scott?
One more question. Was there a decision made for the Parent Information Center to be kept with the central offices?
Mr. Lang?
Well, that's the advertisement will go out to have it be a total unit together, to move the Parent Information Center with the office eventually. That is an office that could be part of the delayed move over. The other thing we are looking at in the RFP is opening it up so that a vendor or whoever's going to provide a proposal could have some space in the proposal that's either together or close for the more public entrance for the Family Resource Center, like we had similar to the Kirk Street entrance for Family Resource, but to have the bulk of the office staff be located either on a different level or next door or something like that. It wouldn't have to be all ground level prime kind of retail space, but at least we would have the Family Resource Center in that space that's more accessible to the public.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. Motion by Ms. Rosikowicz and Ms. Scott, request the superintendent bring forward a cost estimate for consideration to the committee in the FY15 budget for updating textbooks, adding elementary science and social study textbooks, science kits, art supplies, and musical instruments. No second needed. Who's going first? Ms. Rosikowicz.
Thank you, Mayor. This is pretty straightforward. Again, citing concerns from parents throughout the district, concerns that there are still school books out there that are coming home that are 25, 30 years old. There are countries that no longer exist. There are presidents between 30 years ago and now that aren't in those books. So, when it comes to musical instruments, there are inequities across the district, and perhaps it's an opportunity to tie into grants or things of that nature to really repair those inequities across the district. And really, these are just basic items for our schools, for our kids. They need these items. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Scott, anything in the motion? No? All set. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item of the evening by Ms. Martin, request that the superintendent report on the current efforts to establish the first STEM-focused school for the beginning of the FY14-15 school year. Seconded by Mr. Leary. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is a topic that we've been having some, I think, very spirited discussions around, particularly in the curriculum subcommittee. We've discussed it really for over 6-9 months now. It's been something that certainly the subcommittee, and I know the administration and the full committee are very ambitious for. Ultimately, what we want to be able to do is build within our district specialized STEM programming so that we can have, along the idea of what we, in the past and even now at the Pine, we have some specialty programming that go on at some of our schools. We can look at the Pine Arts Magnet as an example of that. What we'd like to be able to see moving forward is establishing, again, this is in the long term, so that we would have 2 elementary and 2 middle STEM schools, that's science, technology, engineering, and math. It is a recognized area that we need to focus on in our district. Our students really need to be having more rigorous and more dynamic programming around the sciences. And I think that it's an area that if we can really make a concerted effort, we could have a profound impact on their performance and their achievement in this important area. Looking at, sometimes things kind of fall into place. The idea of moving the Rogers School back into its previous life as an elementary school does, I think, present us with an opportunity to create this first STEM school almost from the ground up. It is obviously a small school community right now with just a number of kindergarten and first grade classrooms. We will be growing it in somewhat incremental fashion, which also I think makes this very manageable. And as we have talked in previous meetings, we do have some capacity to make some investments in the physical plant of this school that could really bring it into line with being a real state-of-the-art science technology center. Having had these conversations for a long time and having had it, certainly at the beginning feeling a little bit like a pipe dream, it really does appear that now is the time where we could make something really significant happen. And I am obviously a very strong supporter of this, and I am hoping that we can take the maximum opportunity that we can right now to create something new, to create something that is, and I can't state this strongly enough, an authentic experience that is different. I don't want to see us reinvent something that is kind of a STEM light. I think if we're really going to do this, this is our opportunity to do it extremely well, and to really, the onus is going to be on us that if we make these investments, they need to be more than an inch deep, and it's really going to require significant investment in some, physical changes within the building. And maybe even to reference a prior motion, it really is going to be going to require a significant investment in curriculum, in support materials, in the kind of manipulatives and project-based opportunities that we know can just be an incredible opportunity and experience for younger students. We've had a lot of conversations around where to focus this effort. The idea of starting at the elementary school, I think, could be really could be a really wise decision. We have specialized science programming at the high school. We have, a reasonable amount. We would like more, but there's a reasonable amount going on at the middle school level. Our elementary school has never been made whole from the cuts we made over a dozen years ago when we eliminated the science specialists that had been positioned throughout our district. Never come back from that. This could be a real effort to establish a state-of-the-art kind of program that then not only could we replicate at various points throughout the district, hopefully, we could also use it as a model to create other specialty program schools. And I think that that's really the opportunity to differentiate with a very high degree of quality and rigor is the exact direction our district needs to go and if we're going to best serve our students. So I would appreciate the support of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Ms. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I agree with the intent of the motion with Ms. Martin. It does concern me a bit that we talk about moving forward with a specialty school for science, for STEM activities, when we are missing support specialists for science specialists in our elementary schools across the district. We don't have manipulatives. We don't have science books. We don't have science kits. As a parent, I have concerns moving forward with the idea of a themed school when there's this inequity across the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gendron.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Mayor. And I just had a question, and pardon my ignorance, but, being the rookie here, I wonder if somebody could talk a little bit about what exactly STEM means and how this school would be different from other schools. I don't know if that's Ms.
Madam
Martin or you, Madam Superintendent.
Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. The STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the core of the school would be when you're looking at the literacy, the mathematics portions, they would be intertwined. So there'd be units of instruction, they would be, there'd be inquiry in the process of that school. There would be, it's all Common Core standard, but when you look at what's the centrifugal kind of theme, it would be science-based with technology. So we would continue to implement the Common Core standards, but with a different lens. So you would be saying, what is the course? So there's a science theme throughout, which would be a hands-on science, because it's really the only way to have science happen with all children, but especially young children. And then it would be the writing around that. So it would be the scientific process. It would be the visualization around that. The technology pieces would be at that high science academic language piece. And so as we're looking at the Rogers, it takes some different equipment, it takes some different kind of classrooms, but you have to have kind of a laboratory model which incorporates all the writing. It's not different, it's just it's not meeting all the other standards, it's just putting the standards together with science in the center of the plate, which we do with other things in the center of the plate sometimes with the standards, but that's what it would look like. So when you were at the science fair, which I know most all the members were at the science fair last week, you saw that whole inquiry piece and how kids were doing it be more project-based. There'd be artifacts, there'd be an assessment that's like that. They'd have a rubric. Are they giving us the information? How are they presenting orally, verbally? So that kind of inquiry theme is something that have to be developed. Mrs. Cohn and also the science support specialists are really already looking at piloting other programs across the district in science. There's one ongoing at the Pine Art School. There's another project that's going on at the Riley School. So we're just looking at how we're going to augment that. And part of the one-time only costs that we want to present will be incorporated. The former motion that was just before this, the materials, but also what does it need to take to get a school? And who can come and teach there with the content depth and the ability to be that kind of inquiry teacher? That's what is the theme, Mr. Gendron. That's what it would be.
So if I may, sounds like obviously the focus is on science and technology, and maybe the English class talks about a science topic, and maybe the history class focuses on science a little bit more than a typical history class. Is that the?
That's about it.
Just-
And the mathematics is intertwined. So when you're looking at whatever the theme might be, it might be that you're studying plants. And so I'm going back to my teaching days. So you're growing popcorn. It grows really well if you put a kernel. And and so you can measure it every day, and kids are looking at that, and then they do probability. How much do you think it's going to grow tomorrow? So those are all the pieces, but it all comes together. And it really takes a lot of teacher planning, but also that content person that gets it going. But it intertwines.
So if
But
we
you're
were
going
to
to have to have iPads and all kinds of really fun technological things that augment it on a regular basis.
So if we were to do this pilot school, would there be some type of admission criteria for the school?
The location of the Rogers School is a phenomenal school because it's a citywide kind of a place. So yes, there could be parents that would opt in. We have students there at this particular point, but there are always open seats. So there's open seats. Remember, we only have 2 kindergartens, so there's 2 to fill. We have first graders, but some of those will be moving up. But we would have open slots up to, well, a new 50, a new 100 kindergartners, we'll have 50 at least seats in first grade, and then we'll have some in second grade, but we have a lot of transiency during the summer. That would be, and then people would opt to that, or even get on a wait list for that, but that would take that kind of public relations and getting people on board to say, we want to choose the School of Sciences.
I see.
Because that's how it would begin.
Thank you. So I think I'm a little partial to science and technology given my background, but I feel as though it's a really important element of education today, given the economy that we live in, and the getting more kids interested in science and technology, especially at a young age, I think is a wonderful wonderful approach. I hear what you're saying, Ms. Scott, about, geez, we need to update our textbooks so they have the last 3 presidents in them, but yet we're talking about maybe focusing some dollars on a pilot school like this. But I think if we want to grow as a school system, that we really need to, try something like this as an incubator that could potentially, put us in another echelon. So I think it's a good idea as a pilot program, and I would support it.
Okay. Ms. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to respond too, I mean, I have to tell you, I don't see this as something that happens in exchange for improving science across our district, obviously. Investments need to happen in both arenas. So I would not want to, I'm not proposing this in any way to kind of, to take away or to take off the pressure on us to improve our science programming for all of our elementary school students. If anything, I think this gives us an opportunity ultimately as a learning center to be able to improve our overall science instruction, and then that is absolutely meant to then inspire the same changes across the district. So I think that, as we move forward and we're looking at our budget priorities, investments in science kits, and some of the even more, intensive science purchases that we need to make and curriculum purchases, those absolutely need to be part of our conversations. And as we move forward, I think they're going to be very important. But this is something that I believe needs to happen in addition. It's not a, in exchange for kind of situation.
Further discussion? Can I just ask a question on these textbooks? Is there not some rotating procedure where older textbooks are replaced on somewhat of a regular basis with newer textbooks in all the schools and in all the subjects?
Yes. In the area of textbooks, Mr. Mayor, we have had new textbook adoptions throughout the last few years. We've had social studies. We do have to do a new adoption of science in the middle schools. We've had those are probably our oldest texts, but all the other core materials, I think, except, and I'll ask Mrs. Abrams if I recall, I think except for maybe 5th grade social studies, and we have to look for a new science series in the middle schools, but we would be looking at that. We are also looking into, it's very interesting, everything's ebooks now. So when you're looking at textbooks, it's really not the way to go, it's ebooks. The last social studies series that was purchased, I think it was a year and a half ago, 7th graders, I believe, we only got, you get 20 copies because the rest is ebooks, and for those, so it's really very interesting how you can use the online type pieces. So when we do these adoptions, a new textbook, it also takes technology. Mrs. Abrams has been working really closely with getting a technology program called Discovery Ed, which is a visual social studies and science type of curriculum. And so when you're looking at this, I know I'm not supposed to make excuses, but I can't control if someone's sending home the old history book. I'm just going to say it, because if it's 3 presidents ago, people have textbooks that they use and they've kept. So they are core curriculum, but none of the social studies books, I believe, are that old. And I'll ask Ms. Abrams for clarification.
Ms. Abrams?
Thank you. Yes, I was surprised by that comment, so that's something I'll look into tomorrow. But I do want to talk about the fifth grade social studies that you just spoke to, Superintendent. We understand that the fifth grade social studies books really need to be changed, but it really is an age of technology, and we were very fortunate from January to the end of this school year to have a pilot going on in our fifth grade classrooms through Discovery Education using their online textbook, which in order to be updated and keep things up, really in the forefront, everything that happens on Discovery Education is like what happened yesterday. So we're really making an effort to bring things together, have things updated so that we don't have any books like that around. The science at the middle level, I believe the last purchase, if I'm correct, was in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. So that's something we have to look at. But again, there is so much out there in Discovery Education, if that's the route we choose to go, that we can have these books online. And with that, all the bells and whistles, the videos, the investigations that kids can go. It's just a really exciting time. So I'm happy with the motion to really look at this and to look at it deeply, but it is something that's on the radar and something we're constantly taking a look at.
Okay, Ms. Rassikowitz?
Thank you. I just want to make one comment, and I think this is a great discussion to have about the textbooks, because I think parents aren't necessarily aware that you're using an e-component at school, and what they're seeing at home is something that is seemingly out of date. So there's that, that communication piece, and that's why I think it's really helpful to have this discussion right here on the floor. Thank you.
Back to your motion.
Just one comment. I am going to support Ms. Martin's motion. It's asking for a report.
Right.
It's asking for a report from the superintendent. Again, I just express my concern with it is that we do both, that we do those science kit purchases. I'm not opposed to moving forward with this. I just don't want it to be an unfunded type mandate where we put the school in effect and we don't have the funds to support it long term. Thank you.
Okay, motion by Ms.
I just wanted to add on in terms of the science and the kits. Our new district support specialist for STEM came from another district and really has a lot of information on science kits. So we are fortunate to have for next year a lot of FOSS science kits that will be basically given to the district so we can start to pilot and see what they look like. So we're moving in the right direction.
Okay.
It's exciting.
Okay, on Ms. Martin's motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Under subcommittees, Student Support Services Report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Tuesday, March 18th. Ms. Ross-Sikowitz on the report.
Thank you, Mayor. So we met on Monday. I'm sorry, last night. Oh my gosh, it's been a long 24 hours. So we met last evening at 7 p.m. at the Rogers School. Those in attendance were myself and school committeeman Mr. David Conway. Also present were Jean Franco, Janine Jarkin, Jennifer McChrystal, Ingrid Markman, Jason McCraven, Jane Campbell, Susan Crawford Frazier, and Dr. Roxanne Howe and Kristen Kirby. We were presented with two agenda items. Number one was the options-based response procedures for emergency preparedness, and the second item was out-of-district placement report. The options-based response procedures for emergency preparedness was facilitated by Assistant Superintendent Janine Durkin, Deputy Fire Chief Jeffrey Winward, Lowell Police Department Sergeant David Peasley, Bailey School Principal Jason McCraven, and Greenwich School Social Worker and NEMLAC Crisis Recovery Team Coordinator Kristen Kirby. They presented a plan for implementing this options-based response protocol as part of the district's emergency preparedness plan. The PowerPoint presentation is actually located on our website, on the school's website, and contained within our packet. So anyone in our audience is more than welcome to go on and view it themselves, but I'll just give you a few brief highlights. So the highlights of the presentation included the establishment of a district emergency preparedness team, providing an overview of team initiatives for the 2013 and 2014 school year, as well as an overview of the current emergency preparedness protocols and procedures. They did touch on the national statistics involving lethal incidents in schools across the country. It also included government recommendations for proactive emergency response plans. They also presented options-based response recommendations for Lowell Public Schools, and we discussed a rally and reunification points for Lowell Public Schools were there to be an incident, a critical incident at any one of our schools. An outline of the plan for implementing options-based response procedures to Lowell schools was presented to us, and then recommendations from the subcommittee moving forward, because this is not set in stone. It would include emergency procedures for students, it would include emergency procedures in the Lowell Public Schools Student and Parent Handbook, explore availability of training videos for staff and students, and a plan to be reviewed by the city solicitor prior to implementation, and of course, a plan to follow up with our subcommittee. There was a lot of information. It's I think probably Ms. Durkin might be able to expand upon.
Ms. Durkin?
Certainly. The committee's been meeting since September on a monthly and now bi-monthly schedule to look at current crisis plans throughout the district. We've created draft plans that are going to be presented to our administrators for feedback. And we've also done a lot of research on the safety protocols that have been recommended by the United States governmental agencies and local education agencies as well. So those recommendations are what our committee took into consideration when really looking at our current emergency response plans. Currently, we use lockdown procedures, and we don't have options-based plans in place. So that is the recommendation going forward, to present this to our administrators, our school staff, and roll out a plan so that all staff and students are afforded the opportunity to have training on this by the start of the school year next year.
Thank you. So as a report of progress accepted by Mr. Conway and myself, the next item on the agenda was the out-of-district placement report, which was presented by Jennifer McChrystal, the Director of Special Education. And it was in response to a motion by Mr. Larry, which was a request the superintendent prepare a report indicating the cost and programs of students in out-of-district placements to ascertain if it would be financially beneficial to establish in-district programs that would meet or exceed the level of services currently being provided to these students outside of the district. According to the information that we were presented last evening, there are 147 students currently placed out of district. Highlights of this presentation included a report on the number of Lowell Public School students in and out of district placements, including who maintains fiscal responsibility, programmatic responsibility, tuition, and reimbursement. And it should also note that we are not fiscally responsible for all 147 students. We share some of that responsibility with other communities depending on the appropriateness of the placement. We were presented with an overview of potential options and cost savings for returning students to the district given the least restrictive environment and free and appropriate education. We also reviewed a proposal as well as short and long-range benefits of the plan for Lowell Public Schools to collaborate with CREST for inclusion of satellite classrooms on site in Lowell Public Schools. And that would affect currently 24 students And that would provide us with greater oversight of those 24 students as well as capacity. The recommended next steps from the subcommittee were to develop procedures for ensuring students receiving services are in fact Lowell residents, investigate billing families who are found to be misrepresenting their address, continue the discussion of availability of space and additional recommendations from CREST, and include a proposal as part of the budget planning process. That is a report of progress.
Thank you. Mr. Conway, then Mr. Leary.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to say that it was perhaps one of the best subcommittee meetings that I've ever attended. The information was incredible, and I want to thank Assistant Superintendent Janine Durkin for putting this together. And when I sat down, it was amazing. I mean, I shouldn't say it was amazing. I kind of expected it because everyone was working together. They were extremely knowledgeable. They were all on the same page. You can see that there was a tremendous amount of effort and energy that's put into this. And there are certainly very important things that took place that night. When we're talking about safety protocol, and I think the constant update of all the schools, and I think that, you know, as I mentioned the other night, you can have the best curriculum in the world, and that's wonderful. But the fact is, every parent wants to know that when their child, whether they're in the first grade or in the 12th grade, when they go off in the morning, they want to make sure when they come back, they're safe. And I felt very secure, and there was a tremendous comfort. I think there was a comfort level that came from this meeting. So again, I congratulate your staff in putting this together. And also, when we're talking about streamlining the out-of-school placement, once again, that's an area that it certainly looks like that everyone is going into. They're looking at it very carefully to see if there can be money saved out of that. And I think that, you know, with Mr. Leary bringing that motion forward, I think it's extremely important to take a good look at it so that we are giving the appropriate service to our students in Lowell. And it was very comforting that your staff in special ed is taking a very good look at this. So again, I want to congratulate you on doing a great job for that subcommittee meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Leary.
Thank you, Mayor. First, thank you very much, Madam Superintendent, for your staff taking the time to put this together. It's an awful lot of work, an awful lot of people quite a few folks put a lot of time into it. And I do appreciate it. The reasons for putting this together are really because we got to find a way to manage our costs more effectively. I do appreciate the information. I haven't had a chance personally to go through it, but I know as we get into the month of the end of March, April, as we begin to draft the budget, and especially next year where a lot of these programs or targets would be reached, a lot of it won't happen this year, or maybe some of it will with the spacing issues. That's really, I guess, when I look at just some of it, there's like there will be a transportation savings, and the cost is being calculated. Do we put timeframes on this? I know it's a tough question at this point, but do we have some type of goals set to have like other recommendations coming forward? I know,
Ms.
Madam
Durkin?
Superintendent, and through you too.
Ms. Durkin or Madam Superintendent?
At present, John Dakota is looking at all of the transportation cost. Right now, one of the things that plays into the factor is a student's IEP, and whether or not a parent determines that they wish their child to come back. So some of those things are flexible in nature, but John Dakota is looking at that right now to ascertain if we were to look at the CREST proposal, which I welcome any of you to take a good look at it, ask us questions. We'd be willing to meet to talk about it further, but it's really about building capacity. And if we can do this well, then we can bring in students from out of district, not only our own students, but we may be able to afford opportunity to actually tuition students in from other communities.
And thank you. I think that's exactly what we need to be driving to look in terms of being a profits, I hate using the word profit center, but being that we're so needy, depending on the state and Title I grants, we need to find a way to be different. And I like that approach, and I like the thought process that's going into it. And unfortunately, we really need to push the envelope and be aggressive with the timeframes. And I don't know if that's something you're going to be able to roll out for next year, or you're looking envisioning for 2 or 3 years down the road. But either way, I think that's the right approach, the right way to think about it. The question is, what do we need to do in order to start achieving that? And the key is, though, I think has been said already, not just achieving it to save money, but to do it effectively.
Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This proposal is to try and incorporate part of keeping the Crest children. It would be still, we would still be paying Crest, but they would be on our site, which we would get tuition. The most interesting, well, it was a really interesting meeting, but one of the most interesting facts we learned is that by bringing the children back here, we would be building within 3 to 5 years, being able to take over these buildings. So in essence, then we would be able to say, and you know, if we don't build it here, Crest will build it in Drake it. And so then we'd be sending our kids to Drake it. So building that basis, we staff our special education programs well to meet the needs of our students, and we have many experts. So that was very interesting to say. We need to get ahead of the fact that Crest, formerly GLEC, is a small campus. They're looking for space. And so by us taking this space, this year we would get the $8,000 per classroom. But if we started off with the proposition of maybe 3 classrooms just to begin, we would build capacity in our own. And so that's looking long term, because this committee knows that we every time look at out of district placement and how they increase every year. So that's really interesting. But what the special education department's trying to do is get ahead of the fact that if not Lowell, it will be Chelmsford, or it will be Drake it, or it will be someplace that has some space to be able to absorb. So we are looking towards your support to get this going for as early as the next school year, to at least have that collaboration, the CREST collaboration.
Thank you. Ms. Durgan?
Yes, I was just going to echo that we are prepared, and Jen McChrystal and our staff have worked with CREST to accept this proposal for the start of the school year, and that would be just pending insurance that we have space set aside at the Rogers School to actually have that happen. I just, in closing, Jen McChrystal, do you want to come to the mic? No?
Sorry. Hi, everybody. I think that they've really summarized it very well, but there's another piece to this. Doing this CREST proposal, there's no upfront cost to us. They will provide their own teachers, paraprofessionals, and a ABA, which is a board-certified behavioral analysis, who is able to come right in and take over this program. So this is not going to cost Lowell any more than the tuition we're already paying. Plus, we would get the money for them to rent the space as well. And then looking at transportation, we're at least not busing these students to Methuen. They're in Lowell, which is a benefit to lots of families. They can be closer to their siblings. The parents have opportunities to come visit their kids. And we have the opportunities to really see this program. We're spending an awful lot of money. I love the idea of being able to walk through every day and say, wow, this is really good. Now we're going to learn from this, and we're going to build capacity in our own programs. But I think it's important, as you guys are all talking about how much money, and we're looking at budgets, this really is not going to cost us anything to start this up. And they'll provide the staff, which is wonderful. So thank you all for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. And a sincere thanks to the Jen McChrystal and her staff for the extensive work that they've done. And they continue to do work. We just met today, and we have more exciting data to review. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Durgan. Any further discussion on this item? Ms. Scott?
I just ask one question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Madam Superintendent? How many classrooms, how much space does this program need to run?
Madam Superintendent or Ms. Durkin?
3. It would be 3 at this time.
Starting at 3, is that, okay? You want to come? We like your enthusiasm coming up.
This is very exciting for me. I love this. I kind of live and breathe all of this stuff. We are specifically looking at targeting the students who are on the autism spectrum. We know that that's a huge growing population for us. We also know that we have existing programs right now filled with Lowell students in the CREST program that we can lift up and simply put in Lowell. We also know that we have kids out at MSEC that we can bring back into the program. And we have a few students of our own that may need to go out of district that could fill these classrooms. So we're proposing we start at 3 and specifically looking at a lower elementary, an upper elementary, and a middle school that would build our capacity to ensure that we're doing what's best for the students in Lowell and then growing the program from there. But that gives us a chance to really look at some different options. And they would also supply their own materials, which is great as well. So it's not like we'd have to outfit them with anything as well. So, anything else?
Thank you.
Any further
Thank you.
questions? This is all good news. The longer you stay up, the better it gets. Ms. Rostigowitz?
I'd like to commend staff for this proposal. I mean, they took Mr. Leary's motion and not just provided an answer to that motion, but really thought outside of the box about how we better serve this very fragile population, but also looking at our bottom line. And what a great initiative to really bring our kids back into the district. You know, for a number of our parents, transportation is truly an issue. So if there's an emergency in the middle of the day and mom doesn't have a car, you know, how is that parent going to get to her children? It's a lot easier if her child's in the city. Plus, if you have siblings in the school, I mean, there's a whole another element to this that is just so advantageous for us. Now, the issue is actually having enough space to do it and finding that space. So I thank you once again. It is excellent.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. And the opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. I'm sorry, that was just a report of progress. We'll accept the report of progress by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for attending and providing that information. Moving on to the next item of the agenda, reports from the superintendent. Item number 16, 2014-2015 school calendar. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your package, you received a proposal for your approval of the school calendar for next year. Incorporated in this calendar are the regular holidays, vacations, and whatnot, but also in bold, a proposal for a continuation of the half-day release time for 9 months, not November, because there's so much holiday time in that particular month, for your review and any questions you may have.
Discussion, Mr. Leary?
Just a quick question. Do our meetings fall on the holiday for February and April? Just curious, I don't.
Let's see.
So it's the first and third, so is it the February vacation would be the third week, right? The only thing I would look at if it is, because I think we do this every year, and if we can look to switch those for that week, if that's possible, thinking this far in advance, not the biggest deal in the world, but a lot of folks take vacations during that time frame, and frankly, most people are probably either away or not really paying attention to the meeting, and committee members like myself are probably going to be pulled on vacation because we have kids in school at that point in time. That's the only time we can really take a vacation. Again, that's kind of something to think of now as opposed to later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rostikowitz?
Thank you. I was just thinking of our discussion last year around the calendar, and there was a request, the calendar that was presented actually gave our kids more half days or an early dismissal. And one of the points of discussion that we had last year was the potential of sunsetting some of those half-days, because of course we want to keep our children in our classrooms as much as possible. Is there a reason why we haven't sunset that component? We haven't decreased the number of half-days. It looks like we still have the same number as this year.
Yes, I did not change the number of half-days for two reasons. The first reason being that with the loss of the Race to the Top funding, which had really augmented our professional learning time, this time is really critical, and we're still in the midst. The reason why we were awarded the time last year is because of the implementation of the evaluation system, but we're still not finished with that. We're going to have the district determined measures where we're looking at outcomes of evaluation based on the data. So there's still a good deal of work to do, and so that's why my recommendation would be to maintain those 10 days, but I will bring it back if, in fact, that's the wish of the committee.
Mr. Leary?
I'm going to support one more year of the sunset. I think initially I voted no on this program. I'll do it for another year, but it makes sense to actually change the dates for the February and April vacation, move it to the 4th Wednesday. So I make that as a form of a motion.
Motion by Mr. Leary to change this.
Changing the school committee meeting, so I'm not going to change the vacation week, changing the school committee meeting, which is the 3rd. I think we do the 1st and 3rd. So I want to take a look to move those meetings so we're not on the vacation week.
You're suggesting 1st and 4th
Well,
for those months?
Correct, yeah.
I'll second the motion.
That's, can we hold off? That's really not on the motion on the floor, is to adopt the school year calendar.
It's a school, I'm sorry, I apologize. I think I'm getting ahead of myself then. Really, what I want to do then, so basically we can do that at a later time frame, change the meetings. You're
Right.
correct, I wasn't thinking clearly with it. That's something that I definitely want to do. I can support the calendar. I'm definitely going to support this year with the additional half-days, even though initially I wasn't supporting it. So I will do one more year, but I think Ms. Ross-Sikwich is correct. We need to sunset that going forward, or looking at that in next year. Thank you, Mayor, for clarifying. 'Cause you did,
So we'll bring that in as a motion in the next meeting?
correct,
to
I'll do
change-
that. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Ms. Ross-Sikwich?
I just want to say, I mean, I will be supporting this calendar, but, we approved this last year with the condition that it would be sunset, and, we all recognize that there is time that needs to be devoted to this new evaluation tool. So I hope that next year, my hope is that next year we can sunset this and put our kids back in, give them more time back in the classroom. Thank you.
Further discussion on this calendar? Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross-Sikwich?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Motion carries. Next item, number 17, report of the Superintendent's Substance Abuse Prevention and Awareness Task Force update. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in receipt of a report by Assistant Superintendent Janine Durkin in response to a motion that was made by Mr. Gignac that requested the development of a drug abuse prevention and awareness task force for Lowell Public Schools. Task force should include but not be limited to school department staff, city officials, public safety officials, health officials, and members of the public. Task force should work to develop strategies to address drug abuse issues throughout the city. And so I'll give you a general overview, and I'll ask Ms. Durkin to fill in the details. It appears that Ms. Durkin and her staff have met with the existing task force in the city, and they had determined that there were a number of members already on that task force, and it appears that their recommendation is for school department staff to join the task force, but I will ask her if there's any more details you'd like to bring forth.
Thank you. There is an existing substance abuse and prevention task force that's part of the Greater Lowell Health Alliance. At present, there are 122 members on that task force, and 84 of those members represent the city of Lowell, including our own teaching staff and city officials, government, police, fire, EMS. So I met with the Substance Abuse Task Force in February. I also met with 2 of their subgroups. That one of them is the policy subcommittee. As a result of that meeting, they took a vote to change that policy subcommittee to the curriculum subcommittee. We have placed on that subcommittee 3 members of the city, the Lowell Public School Department, to focus on the curriculum end of things. I will serve directly on the Substance Abuse Prevention Task Force that meets monthly. And we believe that, and we've also got 2 additional members who are serving on 2 other task force at this time. As we go forward and we determine if there's a need to add additional members to the existing subcommittees, we will do so. But we feel that this is the best way to not duplicate efforts and not pull and draw on the same individuals, but also be able to augment our support services by gathering all the resources from around the community.
All set. Further discussion? Motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the opposed? That motion carries. Next report of the superintendent is the Lowell High School pool update. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in response to a motion by Mr. Conway for me to give a report concerning the additional safety measures that have been put into place at the location of the Lowell High School pool area and specific dates and safety measures that were instituted. Throughout the 2012-2013 school year, there were locks and other areas added to the pool. There were inspections by state and city officials, and the swipe card reader was installed. In going towards 2013, the system's even improved because of the work that's been done at the high school with the access and the swipe kind of measures on the doors. So there's swipe card readers have been implemented and installed. There were cards activated for just certain people, and it's not by a number of people. So the physical education staff, custodians, SROs, Dr. Howe, Headmaster Martin, and curriculum coordinator Ms. McLeod was the other person who I have been given the activator for that area. The head coaches by season have access. But there are no outside users that have been given access. That's opened for the public from groups that rent our pools. That is done by internal members of our system. And so the monitoring system is activated. It is monitored and reprogrammed by the Lowell High Security Department. So that's the update on what has happened most recently to date.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. For discussion, Mr. Conway.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Superintendent of Schools and also extend a thank you to the Headmaster, Brian Martin, for putting this report together. And I think that it certainly is very inclusive. There's no doubt about it that there's been some great additions made to the pool area to make things a lot safer for all our students and for our staff. So again, I congratulate the staff for making those changes. Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the opposed? Motion carries. Next report on the superintendent. Item number 19, Partnership for Readiness or College and Careers Exemption. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. At our last meeting, I had a response to Ms. Scott's request for parent exemption from Park. And at that particular meeting, Ms. Scott had asked for me to refer the whole case that was given to us from the state of Massachusetts to the city solicitor's office. I did forward that report in its entirety to Ms. O'Connor, who reviewed the particular case, and in her opinion that she forwarded to me that she concurred with the state review. That's what I got for information, and for your comments and review.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Discussion? Motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the opposed? That motion carries. Next report by the superintendent, home education. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is a request for a family to home educate their child. Mr. Vincent Ruiz from Hilder Street is requiring home education, went through the process of the Lowell Public Schools. If this is granted by the committee, this will make us having 30 families that are homeschooling their children, and there are a total of 47 children.
Discussion, Madam, no. Motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Ms. Ross Sikowitz, second by Ms. Scott. This requires a roll call.
Ms. Martin? Ms. Ross-Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Under new business, there are a number of votes. There are 6 votes ahead of us. And these are all statement of interest for a number of schools. So I will read the text of just for one vote, and then we'll just proceed with discussion on others. So the first one is a vote to authorize statement of interest for the Daily Middle School under the core program. Vote number 1, Daily Middle School, having conveyed in open meeting on Wednesday, March 19th, prior to the closing date, the school committee of the City of Lowell, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated March 17th, 2014, for the Daily Middle School located at 150 Fleming Street, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority category for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future under priority 2, elimination of existing severe overcrowding, priority number 4, prevention of severe overcrowding expected to result from increased enrollments, and priority number 7, replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide a full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the city, town, regional school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. Entertain a motion to approve by Ms. Ross-Sikowitz, seconded by Mr. Leary. Roll call. I'm sorry, question, Ms. Ross-Sikowitz.
Okay. I just have a couple questions, just so I'm clear. So tonight, we're not voting to put one project out in front of another, correct?
Mr. Lang.
That's my understanding.
Okay. So the other communication that we received was the suggestion that we pull one of the K through 8. Are you going to get into that when we get to that?
If you want.
Yep. Mr. Lang, why don't you provide a report, A, on the communication today, and secondly, I can add some information on what the process is. Tonight, my understanding, we're just proceeding, we're submitting 5 of the 6 statement of interest, as we have discussed, to move forward and satisfy the criteria for Mass School Building Authority. One of them will be withdrawn based upon the conditions, and then we'll proceed with setting up a meeting with MSBA sometime next week to go through the process so we all have a firm understanding as to the direction and the goals that we're trying to achieve. Mr. Lang?
Okay, there are 2 steps that have to happen between now and April 11th when we file the statement of interest. So we've identified originally 6 projects in this facilities assessment we've gone through, the 6 different votes you were prepared tonight. After the school committee votes to authorize the statement of interest for those 6 projects, we can finalize the applications online. I'll be working with OMR to do that. And the next step would be for the school committee to designate one of those 6 projects as the priority application. That vote has to happen before the applications can be submitted on April 11th. I originally put the 6 votes on for all 6 projects, and as I've been working with OMR to put our applications together, the question came up about how to actually apply online for the 5th project, which was that new pre-K to 8 school that we wanted to have a discussion with the SBA about. When I talked to 2 different representatives at the SBA yesterday, they indicated you don't actually apply through the statement of interest process for a new school. A new school might be something that comes from a feasibility study. That the way the SBA guidelines are set up, you can only submit a statement of interest for an existing school building, not a potential new school building. So what they indicated is we've obviously identified, say at the middle school, through our middle school applications, and even the Rogers School application, that we have current and projected overcrowding issues that we would like to talk to the SBA about. They said when those schools come into the feasibility study and they have a discussion with us about those projects is when one of the outcomes might be a new school. But you wouldn't actually apply for that new school. There's no mechanism for the SBA to consider that. So that's why yesterday, after I had the conversation with them, I sent an email out to you just indicating I would recommend you withdraw and don't take action on that 5th vote with the K to 8 school, because really there's no mechanism to apply for that. And then that would be part of our discussion with the SBA when they came out to talk to us about feasibility for the other middle school projects. So tonight, basically, you should take our recommendation would be you would vote on 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, so that we can finalize those applications. And then we need to take a vote on the priority application before the submission on April 11th.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to Mr. Lang, I just wanted to clarify that priority vote. So I guess what we're doing is we're going to wait on that priority vote. But is that what I don't want to do is impact in any way our application to, to the SBA. Do you feel as though I think it's the mayor was suggesting that we bring the SBA out here so we can get all our questions on the table and clarify what priorities mean and all that sort of thing, which I think is a good idea. But I don't want to jeopardize in any way that April 11th date. Do you feel as though we can get the SBA to come sometime before our next meeting so that we can take that priority vote and then still get it to the city council on time for them to take their vote and make the April 11th date?
Okay. On that, the school committee will be taking the vote tonight on the 5 projects. So that's the first hurdle. The city council, we had anticipated, would take the vote on the 5 projects next Tuesday, but because of the manager interviews, they're not going to have the meeting. It's going to be the following Tuesday. So the council will actually vote on the 5 projects that night. The city council doesn't vote on the priority application. That's only the school committee. So if you vote tonight for the 5 projects, and then the city council votes on Tuesday, April 1st for the 5 projects, we can try to have a meeting with the SBA next week and hopefully be able to do that and answer questions. But we'll have to put on the vote at the Wednesday, April 2nd meeting for the school committee to designate the priority application. So that vote will have to be taken Wednesday the 2nd to allow us to then submit the application by the following Friday the 11th. So as long as that vote can happen, we'll be able to submit our application and be okay. But the city council should be okay because they actually have 2 meetings, even by canceling next week, before, and they don't weigh in on the priority.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Further discussion on this item? I will be in touch with Senator Donahue and members of the delegation to invite them to this meeting as well, and then we'll certainly notify, my office will notify all members of the school committee. I just think it's a prudent move, knowing how important this vote is moving forward on the priority vote, and I just want to get all the information that I possibly can, knowing that in the last couple of weeks, we've learned that this cluster of middle schools project is no longer eligible as a cluster project, and now this latest issue of withdrawing a new construction project. I just think it's wise for us to get a good, full explanation from MSB, so we know exactly where we stand moving forward on this vote. Mr. Conway?
Just very quickly, I think I certainly agree with you. I think the fact is that we have a project that I think is complicated, and we need to get it right. And it also costs a lot of money. And the taxpayers, I think, certainly will applaud the fact that we're taking that time to meet with the SBA so that we can get as much information on that table as possible, so that when we make our decisions, they're informed and they're the best decisions that we possibly can make at the time. So again, I look forward to meeting with them and asking some questions, because again, it's a very complicated situation. And I think everyone's trying to do the best they can, but it seems as though certain things have been changed or perhaps not quite as clear as time has gone on. And I think that when we put everything on the table here and we can ask these specific questions to clarify things, I think everyone is going to feel a little bit more secure when they do make that final decision. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Further discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
7 yeas. Motion carries. Next item, number 22. I'll just read the vote. Vote authorizing a statement of interest for the Robinson Middle School under the CORE program. Motion to approve by Ms. Ross Sikowicz, second by Ms. Scott. Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Motion carries. 7 yeas. Item number 23. This is a vote authorizing the statement of interest for the Wang Middle School under the CORE program. Motion to approve by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Ross Sikowicz. Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
7 yeas. Next item, number 24. Another vote authorizing a statement of interest for the Lowell High School under the CORE program. Motion to approve by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gendron. Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Motion carries. Item number 25. This is a vote. It's a statement to authorize a statement of interest for new pre-K through grade 8 school under the CORE program. Motion to withdraw this motion by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Martin. Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Next item is number 26. Last vote of 6 votes to authorize a statement of interest for the Rogers Middle School under the CORE program. Motion to approve by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Under communications, item number 27, disclosure from James P. Hall, Collective Bargaining Council, to the committee. Questions? Motion to accept and place on file by Mr. Gendron, seconded by Mr. Conway. Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Next item is under professional personnel section of the agenda. Item number 28, the members of the United Teachers of Lowell hereby donate 20 sick leave days to Mark Peabody at the Shaughnessy School. He's a Shaughnessy School custodian. Motion to approve by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Martin. Roll call.
Ms. Martin? Yes. Ms. Ross-Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
That concludes the business before the school committee member this evening. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Gendron, seconded by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. Thank you, Madam Superintendent, Ms. Durkin, Ms. Abrams, Mr. Lang. Have a good evening.